Good morning. Chaf Vav Iyar, Shem Hashem, and Yesod Shebeyesod. It's Kashrus, the bond, the connection, the commitment. And Yesod, in a day like this, Yesod Shebeyesod, it's time to reflect about the Yesod of the Yesod, which means what is, Yesod means literally foundation. That's the meaning of the word Yesod. It's the foundation. So it's time to examine the foundation of our commitments, the foundation of our iskashos. What is it based on? And that begins, as Fegi says, with on human wise, with our hiskashos to the tzaddik yesod olam, which is a tzaddik is the yesod of the world. Why? Because yesod connects between Shamayim Ba'aretz, between heaven and earth, between the divine and the world, between the human and the superhuman, between nature and supernature. So the tzaddik connects between Elokus and the world, Yesod Olam, and that's he is the foundation of the world. Without him, the world cannot exist, because the whole existence of the world depends on the relationship with the divine, on Torah and mitzvahs. And the one that enables this very unique connection between Shamayim and Aretz is the one that makes it happen is the Tzaddik Yesod Olam, the Tzaddik of the generation, who is the foundation of the world, because he is the Mekasher, the connector, which is the Yesod, between the divine and the worldly. And obviously, the Iskashus is first of all our connection to the Rebbe, and what is it based on? We examine that, and obviously the ultimate base is our connection to Hashem, and it's a deep day. It's a as Fegi is saying, it's not a passive day, because the purpose of Yesod is to mashpia, to the mekabel. It's the connection with the recipient, which means we are just about to manifest our contribution to the world that comes out of our commitment to whatever we believe in, whatever we choose to bond with. So we are on page Resh Chaf Hey. After we are, until the end of this mimer, as I mentioned, we are debating between the different shitos of viewing what Ein Sof is and what Kesser is, and where creation comes from, and how it is a reflection of the 2 points truth, that when we talk about God, we have to maintain the reality of oneness, that's its ultimate oneness, and that it doesn't change. Ein shinui, bli shinui. And in that light, we are examining the views of the early Mekubalim, supported by the Rameir and Menachem Azaria from Pano. And we are viewing that view, which, as we learned last time and before, we're going back and forth until the end of the perek, and the Rebbe will come back. And now till the end of the paragraph that we finished, the focus was on the view of the Mekubalim, interjecting rejections of the Ramak and the resolution of the Alter Rebbe of Or Me'en HaMaor. And then next is the Rebbe focusing on the Ramak again. And then the next Maimar, the focus will shift on the Alter Rebbe, and we will not forget, but we will put the view of the early Mekubalim and the Ramak on the back burner, and we'll focus on the Arizal and the Alter Rebbe's view of Or Me'ena Ma'or. But now we finished the main paragraph, and now we are up to um, Resh Chaf Hei, the objection of the Ramak. At the bottom, אכן הרמ"ק ז"ל ימען בזה. The Ramak will not agree with the approach of the Mekubalim that creation is done from Kesser. Kesser is Ein Sof, and Kesser is Kadmon Kekadmusoi. And the Ramak refuses to accept it, saying that you cannot call anything Kadmon but Atzmus itself, and Kesser is a Sphira, and you cannot call it Kadmon, and so on. I want today to focus on a shiur that Rabbi Gopin is sharing with us, understanding more the few points, but one of them is to understand more the Shita of the Mekubalim. And I remember when we spoke about the fact that the Mekubalim view Kesser as part of Atzmus, so Miriam asked, how can there be two in Atzmus? And obviously, as I mentioned many times, the Mekubalim, including the early Kabbalists, had at least the level of intelligence that we have. And this is a very big understatement. So how did they view it? How can there be something but Atzmus in Atzmus when Atzmus is ultimate oneness and Pshitus, plainness? It's not a composite of anything. All right. In order to do that, let's go back to the last few lines of the top paragraph that ends with the agreement of the Rameh, Reb Menachem Azaria from Pano, with the early Mekubalim. וכמו שפירש הרמ"א שם, as the Rameh explained in his Sefer, שבחינת הרצון הנקרא אין סוף, that רצון, Kesser, which is called אין סוף, the מקובלים call it אין סוף, הוא סיבה ראשונה אל הנמצאים. I'm repeating a little bit the end of last shiur, so we get into today's shiur. So the Rameh says, agrees with the Mekubalim, that Ratzon, which is Kesser, which is called Ein Sof, הוא סיבה ראשונה אל הנמצאים. It is the first reason, the first cause of all beings. שאין סיבה למעלה ממנו. There is no cause higher than Ratzon to all the beings, all the worlds, everything that exists. שאין סיבה למעלה ממנו. There is no cause higher than Ratzon to all the נמצאים. להיות בבחינת מקור אל הנמצאים, which means this is the highest aspect, meaning Kesser or Ratzon, is the highest aspect that you can describe as a makor lechol הנמצאים, as a makor, as a source of all beings. Because you can't define God, Atzmus, as a source of all beings. Atzmus is not a source. Okay, it's not. We already defined Atzmus, the term Ein Sof, as lemala mikol toar, is higher than toarim, than descriptions and forms, whatever they are. So they say, well, the first cause of all nimtzaim, of all beings, is Ratzon. And this is the ultimate makor, source of all beings. ומהוסו ועצמוסו נקרא סיבס כל הסיבוס. So how is Atzmus Mahus called? If higher than Ratzon? It's called Sibas Kol Hasibos, the cause of all causes, the reason of all reasons. שממנו נמצא הכל, that from it everything exists, ולדעתם, everything is pound, ולדעתם אפשר צריך לומר, רק במציאוסו יתברך נמצא הרצון. And it's possible to say that they hold that in the מציאוס of עצמוס, in עצמוס there is the רצון. אבל לא שהוא בבחינת מקור חס ושלום. But not that עצמוס is a direct cause חס ושלום. If you say עצמוס is a cause, then you have a problem of אין שינוי, of being changed by whatever is resulting out of it as a cause. Okay, so what did we say here? That the Rameh is saying that the Ratzon is the source and the first cause to all the Nivraim. And the Atzmus of Hashem is the Sibas Kol HaSibos, the cause of all causes, the reason of all causes of all reasons. Why? Because everything comes from Atzmus. Nothing will be without Atzmus. And you might ask, since HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the cause of all causes, so ultimately, he is also one way or another, he is it is, Atzmus is the ultimate source of all worlds, of all creations. Maybe more indirect, as we discussed in the past, the difference between Siba and Ila and Alul, and Siba and Mesuvav. Siba is indirect cause. Ila is a direct cause that is affected by the outcome, by the Alul. But Siba is an indirect cause. It's like the Oram Soibev, and it's like the light of the sun. It's an indirect cause. It doesn't get affected by its ashpa. So you might say, okay, fine. So Siba is an indirect cause, like the sun rays. They don't change the sunlight. It doesn't make any impact, any change, doesn't diminish the sun, and doesn't get affected by the places it shines upon. Yet, even if you want to say that Atzmus is the cause of all causes and the reason of all reasons, so even if you're talking about indirect reasons, yet you're talking about some shaychus to worlds, to beings. Indirect of the indirect, fine. But it's still some kind of a connection of a shaychus. And again, you have a problem with Shinui. If Hashem is the ultimate cause, even the most indirect, then there's a problem with Shinui. When a being comes to existence, it's a Shinui in the cause. And because of that, it says here that לדעתם במציאוסו יתברך נמצא הרצון. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the explanation is that Hashem, according to the view, is considered Sibat Kol HaSibot, the cause of all causes, not because it is the source or a source of worlds, rather because the Ratzon for worlds is in it. Nimtza bo. It's a detail in Atzmus. Now, in order to understand, Rabbi Kopin is explaining now, that in order to understand the difference between Makor and Siba Rishona, which means the difference between Kesser and Atzmus. Kesser is Siba Rishona, and Atzmus is Sibas Kol HaSibos, the way the Rameh and Mekubalim hold. So first, we need to explain.
Could you repeat that? Siba Rishona is Kesser?
Yes, and Sibas Kol HaSibos is Atzmus. To understand the difference, we have to first explain what does it mean that the Mekubalim hold that creation comes from Kesser. What does it mean? Because it arouses, as I said, ended the shiur last time with a question, it arouses a question. What does it mean? Does it mean that Kesser created the world? And hold with your comments because he will present some very, very enlightening kind of points. When you look at the first pasuk of the Torah, and you see Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz, does it mean that Bereshis bara Kesser es hashamayim ve'es haaretz, according to the Mekubalim? The Mekubalim knew not less than us. This is not what the Rabbi Gopin say. I'm saying that the Mekubalim knew not less than us that creation comes from Atzmus. How do we know? Because we already discussed what Ein Sof is. And in that, the Mekubalim agreed with the Ramak. Ein Sof means it's the only one that can create because Ein Lo Tchila is the true Ein Sof. We discussed it. So the Mekubalim knew that it's God himself, Atzmus of Hashem, that wants to create worlds. And the Ishavus really comes from it. So what does it mean that they say that Ishavus comes from Kesser? What does it mean? What do they mean? So now let's follow the shiur of Rabbi Gopin. I think it can be useful. Bichlal u'bifrat. We already discussed earlier, the need for Seder Ishtalshelus that is made out of many tzimtzumim, bekamus and be'echus. The Yeridas HaMadregos, the Spheros, worlds, oilamos, and so on and so forth. And we asked a question about it. And the question was that since HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Kol Yachol, is omnipotent, is almighty, and he can create worlds. Yesh me'ayin, kemo shehu, as he is, without making any changes in himself or from himself. If he wants, right away he will have whatever he wishes, yesh me'ayin. Without tzimtzumim, without yeridas hamadregos, without seder ishtalshelus, without a gradual descent. Why do we need seder ishtalshelus? We asked that and we answered it before. And we answered that Taka it's true. HaKadosh Baruch Hu of himself can create worlds without seder ishtalshelus. But in that case, it will be such a creation that will have no connection and no closeness whatsoever between the creator and the creations. Because the creator is pashut, is plain and unlimited and infinite, and the Nivraim are formed and are finite and limited. And in such a condition, the Nivraim cannot reach any understanding and any sensing of godliness, or perhaps not even knowing that he exists, because of the tremendous gap between God and creation. But since HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted that Bnei Yisrael will recognize him and will come close and create a relationship with him, and him with them, he created the world in a manner of kiruv and a relation between the creator and creations. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu invested and revealed himself through Seder Ishtalshelus, that is serving like a ladder, a gradual descent, milemala lamata, with the purpose that Bnei Israel from their end, Yidden from their end, will use this ladder and will climb up and will get closer and closer through this ladder to Elokus, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They will understand him, they will love him, and they will serve him and do his will. So what do we find? We find that Seder Ishtalshelus is not meant to help HaKadosh Baruch Hu to create, to go down and create worlds. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't have to go anywhere, not down, not right or left, to create world, because he is almighty. He doesn't need any solutions how to create worlds. All he needs to is to want to. That's all. However, this explanation is bringing up a difficulty. Why? Because if HaKadosh Baruch Hu would create the world mitzad kol yachol, because he's omnipotent, without any relation, without any comparability to worlds, as we said before, yes, it's true that creation, in this case, creation will not make any shinu in him. If he creates creation yesh me'ayin, without any relation, then just because he is almighty, then it will not create any shinu in him. Because he has no, as we learned in the Lashon of the Rambam, metziuso miatzmuso, that I'm adding it here, that Hashem's metzius is built in nimtza. That means his metzius is not in relation to anything else. So if as Almighty he can create yesh me'ayin, he doesn't create any change in him, because creation is metzius nimtza, is metzius which is in existence and in relation to others, and atzmus u'mahus is metzius built in nimtza, is a metzius that has no connection and relation with anything else, and therefore it doesn't change out of creation and doesn't get affected by creation. He gives an example here, that like a person that can do things in two ways. There are certain things that we do like automatically. You brush your teeth in the morning. There's very little of yourself that is invested in it. And then there is when you're really intending to write a letter to someone will determine a huge thing about your life. So this activity you will be fully there. But since HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose to have a relationship with us, and therefore he created a gradual order of creation, Seder Ishtalshelus, which means intentfully, like a person who is very intentful in something he's doing. Hashem also invested himself in an intentful and a reasonable way to enable a relation between him and creations. Then again you have the question, if he created it only out of kol yachol and remaining mitzius built-in nimtza, non-existential, fine, lo shanisi, agree. But if you want a relationship and therefore you now make yourself relating to mitzius nimtza, you are going to create seder ishtashelus and invest yourself in that because you want to have a relationship. You want to have a relationship. That means you have to relate to Metzius Nimtza. You have to have a relation with something else. Then Shanisi, you're going to be changed by this. Because it's like a person who is mislabash in the pe'ula that he's doing. So Hashem is invested in the creation. And even if you say, this is a little bit like the Ramak, that is havos mitzad soivev kol almin. It comes from soivev kol almin, meaning it's not an ila, it's a siba, it's an indirect light, that godliness, that function in a way of makiv. It's not revealed, it remains itself, no tzimtzumim. Still, that's what the Ramak says. Lo shanisi, because Or HaSoivev creates. It's like the sun, not like the nefesh. Nefesh is Or HaMemale. Nefesh, when it is vested in the guf, it becomes one with the guf and it's affected by the guf. But Shemesh, the sun, the light of the sun, doesn't create a change in the sun. So that's what the Ramak says. Hashem creates like from the sun, like Or HaSoivev. It's Or HaSoivev, and therefore it's not Mishtaneh, no Shanisi. But even if you say that it is the most indirect way, still the mere fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants worlds and wants a relationship with worlds, this is already a relation. And it requires an explanation how come it doesn't create a shinu in him. In order to answer this question, the Mekubalim were aware of this question, very, very aware, and they say that this Havus is through Kesser. Now let's see what it means. The Mekubalim are, as I'm reminding myself and ourselves, are godly people who were zocher to divine revelations of truth. And their intelligence was uncompromised, and their righteousness was uncompromised. So they too, like the Rebbe Rashab taught us, and through explaining the Ramak's view of Ein Sof, they too had no doubt that it's the essence of Hashem that creates worlds. They knew that. He is the one that wants to create world, and he is the one that creates. Ella, however, the Ishavus from Atzmus is because everything comes from him. He is the cause of all causes. He is the reason of all reasons, meaning, since he is almighty, he creates worlds. But not because he is a makor, he is a source in a way of connection to the world, and not even as a reason and a tam, a reason, even not for the reason of being close to worlds. When you talk about the fact that Atzmus is creating, if you are talking the way creation comes from Atzmus, then from Atzmus, creation is a manner of richuk, of distance between the creator and the created. And the Nivraim from that aspect do not recognize God, cannot come up and come close to him, and that's that. In order to create closeness and shaychus, relatedness with worlds, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is now explaining the view of the Mekubalim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world be'emtzaus HaKesser, through Kesser, via Kesser, which is the first cause and source that is shayach and in relation to worlds. According to this, you can understand that all these terms and descriptions of the Mekubalim that call Kesser Ein Sof mitzad atzmo. Remember, the Kabbalah said that Kesser is Ein Sof of itself, out of its own right, so to speak. And it is the one that creates. It doesn't mean that they disagree or they negate that Atzmus is the creator. Rather, they agree that Atzmus creates, that all creation comes from Atzmus. But since it happens through Kesser, creation from the aspect of Kesser creates a closeness, a relatedness between HaKadosh Baruch Hu to worlds. So what do we find, ladies? What do we find? We find that there are two sources of Ishavus, of creation. Mitzad Atzmus and Mitzad HaKesser. There are two sources of creation. There is Havus Mitzad Atzmus, creation that comes from Atzmus, from essence of God himself, functions in a manner of almightiness, of omnipotent, that anything and everything can happen, and if he wants worlds, there are worlds. But it is distant from worlds, has no relation, no closeness, no shaykhus. The Maila of it, no shinui, no change in the creator, because there's no relation. There's no relation, there's no impact. However, the second source is the Bria comes from Kesser. And since Bria happens through Kesser, hold the Mekubalim, now Kesser is making it that creation can be in kiruv, in relation and in closeness to the creator. But, explains Rabbi Gopin, the biur according to the shita of the Mekubalim is insufficient. Why? Why? Listen to this. What is the problem with this biur? It's nice. Maybe there's a nice cooperation between Atzmus and Kesser. Atzmus comes to Kesser and says, listen, it's not enough that I will create, because if I create, there will be no relation between me and creation. So I'm creating through you. You will be the one that creates, and in that case, creation will be able to relate, to have a relation to its source, and you will create, you will be the first source of creation, that creation will be in relation to and will enable closeness. What's the problem with that? The problem with that, if it comes from Kesser, then how high can creations go up and get close to? In that case, creation can only get close to Kesser. If creation comes from Atzmus, and creation has no relation with Atzmus, but from Kesser, it can have a relation. But what is the relation with? In that case, the relation of creation will not be with Atzmus, it will be with Kesser. Because Atzmus has nothing to do with them, and Kesser has. So that means that all creations could be relating only to Kesser. This is how high they can get. And in that case, the connection with Atzmus will be expressed only in the manner of emunah. We can have faith, but we cannot understand, and we cannot really relate to it in an internal, in a revealed way, in an integrated way. Meaning that in that case, Yidden, Bnei Israel, Ma'aminim, they believe that he creates the world, but in that case, the Nivraim have no ability to understand, to sense the Atzmus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore not to be battled to it in an internal and truthful and full way of real relation. So this is the problem with the view of the Mekubalim. It's very nice that you say, okay, I'll give you the mission, Kesser, to be the source of creation, Atzmus says, but then it still leaves a problem that the creation we will not have a pneumius connection, a revealed connection between the real creator, Atzmus, and themselves. They could have a real connection between themselves and Kesser. Therefore, explains Rabbi Gopin, the Ramak comes and brings it up a notch. And he determines that the Ishavus, no, he says, the Ishavus doesn't come from Kesser. The Ishavus comes from Atzmus of Hashem. And he is the first cause, not Kesser. And he is the Makor of the world. It's Atzmus which is the source of the world. And Mimele, naturally, he is close to worlds. He has a relation to worlds. And Bnei Israel can come up and get closer to him, can ascend and get closer to him. But then we said that according to the Shita of the Ramak, we have a difficulty. How come it's Ein Shinui? That means that if he is the direct cause, Atzmus, then there is a Shinui, there will be a change as a result of creating and relating to worlds. So if Hashem is in this case, is him himself, Atzmus, close, can be close to creation and is close and relates to creation, how does creation not causing a change in him? So the Ramak, as we already learned, and we go back to that, settles it by saying that the Ishavus is done from Makif only, not in a Or Memale, but Or Soivev, and the Makif doesn't cause a change, like the sunlight vis-a-vis, in contrast to the way the Nefesh animates the Guf. Still, nevertheless, it's a relation. And it's still not understood how can there be a relation, a closeness, without a shinui, without an effect. If you are interested to have a relation, no matter how makif it is, if you are interested to have a relation, how can you say that with the way the relation goes will not affect you? You are invested. Therefore comes the chidush of the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe says, Or me'eino ma'or. We will learn more about Or and Sof, Bezrat Hashem, in the next few Maimarim. That determines that the Ishavus coming from Or, but mikoyach ha'atzmus, with the power of Atzmus. And this biur has two advantages. On one hand, there is no shinui in Atzmus itself, because the creation comes from light. And the light enables kiruv. The light enables closeness. Because light is Metzius, the beginning of Metzius Nimtza. Or and Sof can relate. And therefore, I said to you in the past, we don't have to get into it, just to bring it up again, that therefore Hasidus says that since Atzmus is Metzius Bilti Nimtza, Atzmus is non-existential existence, and Or and Sof is already existential existence, therefore Or and Sof is in relation to worlds and enables closeness. But on the other hand, just Or itself would not be sufficient. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe says, Or is me'eino ma'or. Because of the bitul and the dveikus of the light with the ma'or, with the source, light carries the power of the Atzmus, which is the power to create. And therefore, what the light, since the light is existential, which means Or and Sof is in relation with worlds, and creation comes from him, from it. How? With the power of Ein Sof, with the power of the source, because Or and Sof has no ego, and therefore its ego is its source. And therefore it creates. The other Maila of it, one Maila is, it's the Or creates, not Atzmus, there's no Shanisi. The other Maila is, since Or and Sof is already Or, is already a reality, an existence which is existential in relation to, potentially in relation to others, it enables a kiruv, a closeness to God himself. So these are the two Mailas. If you want to be more precise here, as we learned last time, and we learn more about it, the Or and Sof, the Or has two aspects of it. The Or, the way it is revealed, Or and Sof. This is not Rabbi Gopi now, I'm just explaining more. There is the Or and Sof, the where it is Begilui, which everything is there. Or Alter Rebbe can call it Spheros Ein Ketz, infinite Spheros. And the way, and then there is the Or, the way it is kalul in the Ma'or, the way it is included in the source, which That is Shmo. This is what the Alter Rebbe explains. This is Kadmon, because it's part of Atzmus, and it's called Yecholes, which means that in the way the light is included in the source, nothing is missing. Not that it has everything, nothing is missing. Anything can come from it. And because the creation comes from Or, and because Or has the aspect of Yecholes, which means it being part of Asmus, as a possibility, that any possibility can come from it, then through the Or, creation can connect with Asmus. Do you see that? Through the Or, the revealed part of it and the concealed part of it, you can actually connect it to Atzmus, because Or in Sof is a bridge between creation and Atzmus, because Or has two aspects of it. The revealed Or in Sof has everything in it, Spheros and Kates. And it's in Mitzios Nimtza, it's the beginning of the Mitzios Nimtza, which means it can be relation to anything outside of itself. But the pnimius of Or, the atzmus of Or and Sof, which means the way Or and Sof is part of atzmus, the yecholes, that is part of atzmus. That's the pnimius of Or and Sof. And therefore, through Or and Sof, creation can relate not only to Or, not only to Kesser, not only to Or, but to atzmus itself. It resolves everything. Ani avai lo shanisi, and on the other hand, there is a relation. That's the Maila of the Alter Rebbe. So now to summarize, Kesser, according to the Alter Rebbe, Kesser comes up in Or Ein Sof. Ratzon comes up in Or Ein Sof.
Inner,
Hold that Kesser is part of Atzmus. And the Alter Rebbe says Kesser is part of Or Ein Sof. Alos haratzon. It
but
comes up.
it's the
Kesser comes
outer,
up in Or Ein Sof.
but it's the outer part of Ein Sof. It's the part of
Yes.
Ein Sof that's Shayach to Gilui.
Yes. And
And in the,
Shayach to worlds.
there, well, worlds would be Gilui, a relationship.
Okay. But there's also indirect. Okay. We'll get more into that. What's the summary of the Shita of the Mekubalim? Kesser, the Mekubalim say, Kesser is Ein Sof. Why? It's part of Atzmus. And it creates worlds, Yesh Me'ain. What's the Maila? What's the advantage of their view? Number one, Ani Avai Lo Shanisi. Keter creates and not Atzmus. And since the creation is through Kesser, there is no change in Atzmus. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, they say, is the cause of all causes. It's not a source of world, not a direct source of the world, but it is the reason of all causes, because everything comes from it. The second thing is, Hu ushmo bilvad. In Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer we learn that Ad shelo nivra olam hayahu ushmo bilvad. That before a world was created, there was God and His name. And since before creation of the world, there were two primordial aspects, God and His name. So they say, who, God, is Atzmus, himself, and Shmo, his name, is Kesser. Number three, regarding Ein Sof. In the beginning of the Maimar, the question came up, why is HaKadosh Baruch Hu called Ein Sof and not what, ladies? Why is it called Ein Sof and not?
Kadmon, not end, no beginning.
Yes, right. Why HaKadosh Baruch Hu is called Ein Sof, no end, and not Ein Tchila? Ein Tchila, no beginning, is way higher than no end. You have many things that have a beginning and don't have an end. Things that are eternal but have a beginning. So lichora, if you call HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ein Tchila, it would be, which means no beginning, it would be a higher praise than no end. Why? Because they say that Kesser is also Ein Sof. Why the Mekubalim didn't call him Ein Sof? And Tchila, I'm sorry. Because they say, well, because there's another thing that is Ein Sof, which is Kesser. Ein Sof Mamash. And even Kadmon Kekadmuso is as primordial as Atzmus itself. It was always there. But it has a Tchila. It's not a Tchila, a beginning in time, in Ishtalshelus, because it was always there, but as Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer says, Hayahu Ushmo, there are two things, that him and his name. He is the owner of the name, and the name is secondary to him. And the name, they say it's Kesser, and Kesser is Ein Sof and Kadmon, but you cannot call Kesser Ein Lo Tchila. It has a beginning in the Baal Hashem, in the owner of the name, in Atzmus. It's not a beginning in time or in Shtalshelus, but in beginning in levels. And therefore they call it Ein Sof and not Ein Tchila. So now, after the Shita of the Mekubalim was explained, who hold that Kesser is Ein Sof, and like this, they are, as such, they are protecting the principle of Ani Havai Lo Shanisi. I don't change. Now he will get back to the Ramak and will explain the Shita of the Ramak again, that the creation of the worlds is from Atzmus of Hashem, from God himself, and it still keeps the principle of Ani Havai Lo Shanisi, because the Ishavus from Atzmus is a manner of Siba or Mesuvav, rather than Ila and Alul. We'll get more into that, in which the Mesuvav doesn't create a change in the Siba. So creation in the manner of Siba, indirectly, or a Soivev, is different than creation in the manner of Ila, when it is Ora Memale that does change. But then the Rebbe will come back to show that the explanation of the Ramak is not all-inclusive, and then from there on, we will focus on the Shita of the Arizal and the Alter Rebbe, Be'ezrat Hashem. Standing of better the Shita of the Mekubalim, that they made a combination of creation from Atzmus that goes through Kesser, and that enables a relation. And yet, it is creating the problem that they didn't resolve the wish of God to have a relation with Atzmus, not with Kesser. With God himself, not with his Kesser. Hashem doesn't want Yidden to serve his Kesser, they want Yidden to serve him and to be in relation with him. And that Hasidus brings forth to the front burner of our Avodas Hashem, Be'ezrat Hashem.
So what enables that relation is R, is
Or Ein
R.
Sof, yes.
And why does R enable that relation? What is the
Because
connection?
Or is Metzius Nimtza, is a reality that can be relating to others.
So it's a Metzius Nimsa and it's Me'in Hamar.
Yes.
So it
On
carries
one
both
hand,
aspects.
it's a Metzius Nimtza because it's Or, it's a Mechudash. The Chassidus doesn't say that Or is Kadmon, Or Ein Sof. Or is Nitzchi, is eternal, but not Kadmon. It was always there, by the way, like the Mekubalim say about Kesser. Or Ein Sof was also always there, but it's Mechudash. We will discuss it, why it's Mechudash, why it's Enu. Why? We'll talk about Amshacha Retzonis, that on one hand Hashem didn't create the Or, he just, it is a revelation which is with his consent, with his Ratzon, but not that it was created through him wanting it and engaged in creation of it. We will learn about it. We didn't begin to learn about Or and Sof yet. That's the next Maimar. Sometimes when it says also Ein Sof, it means Or and Sof. It depends. You have to know where. But now we're talking, when we say Or, we mean Or and Sof. If not, we will call it Yecholes. It's the way the Or is included in the Ma'or. In that case, yes, as a possibility, then in that case, Or is also, that aspect of Or is Metzius Bilti Nimtza. And that's why Or can bridge between the two. Because Ein Sof has two aspects. The revealed aspect of Ein Sof is Metzius Nimtza, beginning of Metzius that can relate. But the Atzmus of Ein Sof, the way it is included in the Ma'or, in Atzmus, is still, it's part of Atzmus. It's a possibility that he is Kol Yachol, he's Almighty. That's part of Atzmus. And that's also Metzius Bilti Nimtza. It's a Metzius that is no relation to others. And because Or and Sof has these two elements, we didn't discuss it, I'm just saying it now. Because Or and Sof has these two elements, plus it's not only Mechudash, that it has a beginning, but it also, because of its bitul and dvekus, attachment to the Ma'or, carries the power of the Ma'or. It is an ideal bridge and connector between creation and Atzmus and Mahus. What is the difference between Or and Sof, the way the Arizal and the Hasidus looks at it, and Kesser as a source of what creates, what creation comes for, and Kesser, the way the Mekubalim think where creation comes from. We will discuss that. Bezrat Hashem. There's a lot to learn. A lot to learn. And after all this, which is Samech Vav, Hemshech Samech Vav, you'll get to Hemshech Ayin Beis, and he brings up, not directly connected now to this topic, but in the way to view Torah and mitzvahs, he makes chidushim that completely go different direction from Samech Vav. Mamash, it's amazing. Anyhow, it's just amazing to see the evolvement of, even in one Rebbe, between Samech Vav and Ayin Beis. Samech Vav is the beginning of Samech Vav, is few years, is 66, and Ayin Beis is 72. It's only 6 years. And less than 6 years, because the Samech Vav took a few years. So, Chidushim. So the point I'm making is there's a lot to learn. Ezras Hashem. Any part of the essence that you hold on to, you really get hold of the whole essence. So even if you didn't learn everything, whatever you learn, try to internalize, review it, read it again, listen to recordings, whatever you can do. And then when you grasp part of the etzem, you grasp the whole etzem. Bezras Hashem.